Okay, so this video is about simple interest. It's for section 4.4 in the book. And interest is the amount is money that a bank will pay you for depositing your money in their bank. Or likewise, it's also money that you might have to pay a bank if you ever take a loan from a bank. So there's different kinds of interest, but for now this is going to be simple interest because, well, quite frankly, it is the most simple and it's a good one to start with as we're learning about interest. Okay, so we're going to have a formula here, which I will write down in a minute. I realize I forgot to do that, but I will do so in a second. And in the formula, actually, I'm going to do that right here. I equals PRT. That's our formula right there. Sorry, I forgot to write that down below. But in the formula, we've got some letters here. And let me explain what those are. I is the interest that you will earn or that you have to pay the bank if you make a loan. P is the principal. Now the principal is just a fancy name for the initial amount of money you've deposited in the bank or borrowed from the bank. So it's P is the initial amount, the principal. R is the annual interest rate. Okay, and now when we use the interest rate in the formula, we're going to have to change it from a percent to a decimal. So we're going to use a decimal in the formula. Make sure you change it. And T is the time in years, and we'll have to be careful about that too. So let me just run through a little example here. Now let's say our principal, or the amount we've deposited in the bank, is $100. Our interest rate for simple interest is 5%, and we are going to leave that $100 in the bank for 3 years. So we're going to start with $100. Okay, now I didn't show the calculations here, but 5% of $100 is $5. 1% of 100 is 1, so 5% is 5. Okay, so 5% of $100 is $5. So at the end of the first year, the bank's going to give you that interest. They're going to give you $5. So after 1 year, you have $105 in the bank. So your initial investment has grown $5. Okay, you're going to leave your money in the bank a second year, so that means you're going to get another $5. That's what this 5 is right here. So then we end up with 105 plus 5, or $110. And let's say we leave our money in the bank for a third year. So we're going to get another $5 on top of what we have in the bank, which was $110. Add $5 to it, and now we ended up with 115 bucks. So that's how interest works when you have a deposit. The bank's going to pay you a little bit of money each year for leaving your money in their bank. Okay, again, here's our formula. So I equals PRT. It's the principal, or the initial amount, times the rate times the time. So let's look at a few examples. All of our examples are going to use this formula, so I'm going to write it each time. Okay, so I equals PRT. Let's see what we've got here. Depending on the problem, we're going to have to find different letters or different variables in this formula. So we're going to deposit 950 bucks. So that's P. So P equals 950 for 2 years. So T is 2. And 4.6%. Now, the rate, we want to use a decimal, so that's 4.6%. Now, to remember, to make a decimal into, I'm sorry, a percent into a decimal, we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right, so that means we're going to have to fill in a 0. So 0.046, we go 2 places over, we got an empty spot there, we got to fill in a 0. Okay, so let's find the interest. And we'll just plug it in here and of course use a calculator. So I equals what we started with, our principal, 950, times the rate as a decimal, 0.046, times how long, which is 2 years. Okay, now let's work that out. Okay, hopefully you can see this okay. Oops, clear that out. So 950 times 0.046 times 2 is $87.84, which is $87.40. Okay, so on your assignment you'll have to find the interest and the final amount. So the final amount of your investment will be what you started with, 950, plus your interest, 8740, which will be, I'm going to do that on the side, I know you can't see it, but it is $1,037.40. Okay, so we'll find the interest and then we'll find the final amount. Oh, look at this one. Some of you might notice what's going on here. There's a little catch in this problem that we got to be careful of. So we're going to deposit $1,500 for 30 months at 8%. Ooh, so again, here's the formula. I equals PRT. And T was time in years. This is months. Okay, so how many years is that? So I'm going to go 30 divided by 12. Again, we can just use our calculator here. 30 divided by 12. And we get 2.5. So that is 30 months is 2.5 years. And we want to make sure and use years in the formula, not the months. Okay, the rate is 8%, which as a decimal is 0.08. Again, decimals here, we go 2 places over, we got to fill in a 0. And the principal, what we started with was $1,500. Okay, so again, our two things, we're going to first find the interest. So I equals the interest equals the principal, 1,500, times the rate, 0.08. Make sure again you're using a decimal, not the percent, times the years, not the months, 2.5. And that is going to be, if you can see that better there, $300. So we're going to get $300 in interest, and that means our final amount is going to be our principal, or $1,500 plus the interest, which is going to be $1,800. Okay, so again, two things, the interest and the final amount. Okay, so hopefully that's all right so far. Let's look at a few more here. Okay, so as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we may not always be finding the interest. We might have the interest and we have to solve for a different letter in the formula, which again, let me write up here. I equals principal times rate times time. Okay, let's look at this one. We earned $32 in interest for a deposit of $400. What was the interest rate? Okay, so we got to do a little bit of solving. So I'm going to plug in what I know into my formula. So $32 in interest, that's I. So I equals 32. Our deposit of $400, that's our initial amount, or our principal. And what we're looking for is R. So R is who knows. So we're going to solve for that. So 32, the interest is the principal, 400, times the rate. Oops, you know what? I messed up. I forgot the number of years. How many years should we have done? How about for 2 years? Sorry about that. I should probably redo the whole thing, but that would mean I'd have to do this whole video over again, and I'm not going to do that. So forgive me there. So I forgot the time in the problem. We're going to just say the time is 2. So $32 in interest for a deposit of $400 over 2 years. Sorry about that. So again, nothing's changed as far as what we're looking for, which is the rate. So interest, principal times the rate, which is R, times the time, which I just filled in was 2. So now we got to solve for R, and this is a little weird, but let's change this a little bit. 400 times 2 is 800. So I'm going to get 32 equals 800 R. All I did was multiply these two together to get $800. Okay? So now what I need to do is solve this thing. Let me rewrite it over here a tiny bit. So 32 equals 800R, just so I can write underneath it, because to solve for R I need to divide by 800. Okay? So that's going to give me that R equals, I'm going to again use the calculator. So 32 divided by 800 is 0.04. Now we don't want a decimal for a rate because interest is usually expressed using percents. So that means that R equals, if we go two places to the right, we get 4%. Okay, so if the problem's written correctly, mine wasn't initially, but you'll have all your information except for one of the variables, either the I, the P, the R, or the T, and then you'll have to solve for it. So here we solve for R. Okay, so this one I wrote okay. So now we got 40 bucks in interest, that's I, on a deposit of 500 bucks. So there's P, that's $500, our initial amount, at 4%, so R equals 4%. Decimal two places to the left to get 0.04. And we want to figure out how long it was in the bank, so we don't know what T is this time. So again, we'll just fill in everything into our formula up here, I equals PRT, and we will solve for what we're missing. Okay, so 40 equals P, 500, times the rate, 0.04, times T. Okay, so these guys, two numbers here, we can multiply together. So 40 equals, so 500 times 0.04, so 500 times 0.04 is, oops, can't see that, and now you're blinded, 20, okay, equals 20t. Okay, now I think a lot of you can see the answer to this. What do we multiply to 20 to get to 40? Well, it's 2, but we could show our steps here. We'll divide by 20. And 40 divided by 20 is 2, so 2 equals t. So our investment was for 2 years. So again, figure out what you're given in the problem. You might have to multiply a little bit over here to simplify it before you solve it, and then you solve it. Usually you'll solve it by dividing to find the missing variable. Okay? Hopefully that's all right. Let's do one more example, and this is an example of a loan. So this would be when you borrow money from the bank's going to charge you interest for borrowing their money, which you'll have to pay back on top of the initial amount that you've borrowed. It's all going to work the same way. So I equals PRT. So instead of the principal being the amount you've deposited, it's the amount you've borrowed from the bank. So we're going to figure out how much interest we're going to have to pay because we want to know how much will the loan be for. So we're going to have to figure out the interest and then add that to our amount that the amount that we've borrowed to figure out how much total money we're going to have to pay back the bank. Okay, so we've borrowed 500 bucks. There's P, 500 at 4% interest. So R equals, not every problem is going to have 4% interest. I realize that every problem I wrote up here does, but that's not always going to be the case. 4% interest, two places to the left to make a decimal, 0.04, and T is 3 years. Okay, let's figure out the interest we're going to have to pay the bank back. So I equals 500 times the rate, 0.04, times the time, which is 3. Okay, so that'll tell us the interest. That's basically our fee for borrowing the money from the bank. Okay, so let me see if I can show you both what I'm trying to type in and the calculator screen, which is a little tricky with the light from my camera here. 500 times 0.04 times 3 is 60 bucks. So basically, it's going to cost us in this scenario $60 to borrow 500 bucks from the bank for 3 years. So our interest is 60 bucks. What we owe the bank, you'll owe the bank what you started with, 500 plus the interest, for a total of 560 bucks. Well, banks don't give you money for free, unfortunately. So again, this is simple interest. There's other kinds of interest that you'll run into when you take math in high school. But for now, this is a good starting place just to help you understand the concept a little bit better of interest. Okay, I hope that's all right. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to let me know. Thank you.